Did you know that all experiences in your life are for you? Welcome to Soul Musings, exploring and embracing higher perspectives with me, Dr. Connie. Discover how every experience is an opportunity for spiritual expansion when we observe and use them from the higher perspective of our soul. Explore how we can create more alignment in our lives by focusing on the essence of the experience we want, rather than the form. Learn about ways of living and working together that can build a more harmonious and cooperative world. In each episode, we share awarenesses and tools that you can use in your own soul's journey to create more love, peace, and joy. Soul Musings starts now. So welcome everyone, all you beautiful souls, and thank you for joining me for Soul Musings, exploring and embracing higher perspectives. And we're going to start the way I like to begin anything, and that is by first just centering in our hearts and attuning to the light or spiritual energy that is within us and without, that divine essence that we are. And so please join me if this feels right for you. Take in a deep breath. Maybe you want to place your hand on your heart and see the most beautiful stream of light that you can imagine coming down from the highest of high, all the way through you on every level of your consciousness, filling every cell of your body. And take another deep breath, and as you exhale, let go of anything that is negative, disturbing, anything you no longer need that may be weighing you down. And now in its place, just see that beautiful light filling the places that have been cleared. See it filling, surrounding, and protecting you for the very highest good. And then when you're ready, come back present. So the centering and receiving the light process is something that you can use in any situation in your life. When you wake up in the morning, interacting with others, when you start something, before you go to bed. It's a great way to set an intention to be clear and loving and centered in your heart in whatever you're doing. Today's episode is called Practicing Spiritual Alchemy, and we're going to look at some specific ways to transform the way you see and experience things that you might otherwise name as judgments or disturbances. But before we start that, I want to share some feedback that I received from last month's episode on setting and using intentions, which can become our spiritual muscles. People who have been working with that process since the last we met. And if you haven't heard that episode, you can view it on YouTube on the Transformational Network channel. So some of the sharing I received regarding setting intentions, Alice wrote, "Setting intentions has assisted me to see more clearly what I am doing that creates what I want and do not want. It helps me to be clear about what I want to do, and it helps me get clear about what I am doing here." John said, "I have changed the statements of my intention to I am, a more powerful expression." And that is a way of making them kind of affirmations. So he says, instead of the intention of vitality, my intention is now I am healthy and vital. Instead of an intention of peace, my intention is now I am peaceful. So that is another way that you can work with intentions to feel more connected to them, to make them more alive for yourself. Janie wrote, related to the intentions, it seems to me I have a more joyful communication and communion with the Lord, and also impeccable attunement and focus. My physical intention, breathing peace, is one I am still accessing in greater ways. What would help also is to do the energizing exercises. And for those of you that didn't listen to the episode, energizing suggestions or exercises are ways that a very broad set of ways you can make the intentions more alive by repeating them, writing them, visualizing them, etc. And Janie continues, I lagged on that, but when I did them out of rote, they didn't do much. When I connected and did them, very impactful and uplifting when I was connected to what they were saying. I'd like to do more. Pete says, even though I have gone through health issues, I am actually glowing and look full of vitality, my physical intention right at the moment. This was a good example of using intentions to address a specific issue. Susan shared, my intention was to release myself from my lifelong addiction to the habit of living in fear and shame and letting them run my life. So I very consciously chose my intentions of physical intention, letting myself be who I am, my emotional intention, having loving and gratitude for all of who I am. My mental intention was being generous and staying conscious and aware of how I use the power of my thoughts. And my spiritual intention, knowing my completeness, knowing my true nature as perfect, and loving my imperfect humanity. And my prayer was to find relief from this deep sorrow and find who I truly am. This led me to recognition of how intentions can create and speed up a life that's for me. My intentions led me to places and experiences beyond what I could ever have imagined. It confirms how I see the world in a reflection of me and my intentions. So those are just a few examples of how people did work with intentions, and I thought they may have some keys for others of you that either have been or want to work this process. Again, all of that is in the free workbook, Building Spiritual Muscles, that you can get by contacting me through my website. So we're going to move on to the method that I'm calling spiritual alchemy, because the focus is to take some experience or situation and transform your viewpoint or experience of it into something more positive, making it into spiritual gold, so to speak, by seeing the opportunity in it for learning, growth, or spiritual expansion. And I'm going to walk you through these reflection questions. And they were the second part of the study that I did for the doctorate at Peace Theological Seminary. And the questions are meant to be used at the end of the day and are more specific than simply looking at how you worked your intentions that day. The questions in the workbook also have an explanation and a different example than the one that I'll be using now. So you'll have a couple of different references for how to use these. Again, the more you use the questions to reflect on, or even better, journal on, the more you will see a shift. At least that was true of the people that were in the study. We're trying to develop a different habit of mind, a different, more uplifting habit in how we see and interpret things, and a habit of living with a positive focus, more and more living our intentions and seeing experience from that higher perspective of our soul and its value for our soul's expansion and progression. So I'm going to use an example that was a question to me about how to see the positive and what was the quote for me in the what they wrote was, I judge myself for being impatient and exploding at my kids. How is that for me? So that's one that I see parents deal with often. And if you aren't a parent, you might think of another similar example with other people in your life, where you get very impatient and often angry, possibly with the interaction. I was so gratified because my nephew recently had his first child, and he's still an infant. And I said, so how's fatherhood so far? And he said, it's great. I'm learning so much. He said, especially patience. I said, oh, it's great that you're seeing it as a learning, instead of this kid's driving me crazy. I'm not getting any sleep. I'm always tired. He said, yeah, we're learning a lot. And I thought that was just a really great way of being a dad, seeing things as a process for him to learn. Okay, so with that example, what the first question is, was there anything I judged today or something that I found challenging? And if so, what was it? And the purpose of this question is to identify any judgments you're holding about something that occurred that day. And I'm finding judgment as a negative evaluation that has againstness energy attached to it, either towards yourself or towards somebody else. I mean, we can evaluate things, And that's okay. But if we're holding on to an energy of againstness, then it's draining our energy and taking us out of the loving place that we might want to live from. And one can usually tell if it's a judgment because the situation pulls on the energy, causes upset or some kind of negative emotion. The same situation could have happened, but we could change our approach or attitude if we see it in a different way, which is what we're going to look at doing. So in this case, we're working with the judgment. I judge myself for being impatient and exploding at my kid. Second question, how was what I judged today actually a blessing? How can I receive that now? Other ways of asking that, what way was this experience for me? How did it reflect my intentions for myself? So the purpose of this question is to find the way that the experience is positive in some way. While there may be aspects of the experience that I really don't like, I look, what does it offer me as an opportunity to grow, to learn, to expand, to strengthen, to seek a better situation? Often it's a blessing of an opportunity to move to a new level of one of my intentions for myself, or maybe set a new intention. And what I have experienced and people in the study experience is that if you have an intention, let's say, to be more patient, you're really asking the universe, spirit, I want to master that. So it's not unusual for more situations where you're getting tested in your patience to happen. So what's the blessing? Well, any negative judgment we experience is, first of all, it's an opportunity to love and forgive ourselves unconditionally. And from my point of view, forgiveness of self or others, just to clarify, is not about approving or condoning the action, and it's not about perpetrating the negativity by holding on to it. Instead, we're looking to return to the loving place inside so we can further live and act from that place and not be stuck with that kind of confined, contracted energy. We can evaluate our behavior as something we want to do less of, but not do that with againstness towards ourselves. Another blessing in the situation might be I can see an opportunity to work that spiritual muscle of patience and acceptance. Any increased awareness, even of something that's a negative pattern, is a blessing. It's an opportunity to become more aware and more consciously choose what we want to be and do. Another blessing here might be I can share with my kids that I understand I am not perfect and that they don't have to be either. We can work to be more forgiving and kind with each other. I can also use the opportunity to assure them of my love in spite of my losing my patience sometimes. So going on to the third question, what part of this judgment is, what does this judgment reflect about me that I can learn about, embrace, or accept with more unconditional loving? This is a really key question because it's not always about what's going on with what's happening outside of ourselves. If we have energy on something, it's often reflective of some way that is part of how we operate or what we're doing. So the purpose of this question, it's to identify as much of ourselves in the situation that we judge when we do something similar or something we don't allow ourselves to do. We might judge somebody that are, hogging the spotlight as we see it or expressing very freely and outrageously because somehow we feel inhibited and unable to do that. Sometimes the judgment is so great we don't even allow ourselves to experience that part. So this is the time to forgive ourselves and lovingly embrace those aspects of ourselves that we have pushed away or judged. In this situation, I can look at what may have triggered my anger inside of me. Am I stressed out in general and not doing enough to nurture myself? I might see that I'm also impatient with myself as well as my kids and expect myself to be a perfect mother or perfect in other ways. I forgive myself for losing my temper and set an intention to be kinder and more loving to myself. If I'm kinder and more loving in acceptance with myself around this or any other situation, I'm going to be more able to be more loving and accepting with my kids and other people in my life. I have to be full and experience my loving in order to extend that to others. So look at how I might treat myself the same way I'm doing to others if it's myself that I'm judging. So after we do that, the next question is, what's the greater blessing I can ask for? What's the intention that I can hold for this situation? Pray, evoke spirit, ask the universe to help manifest the greater blessing, which might be something as simple as the greater blessing is I can ask to be more loving, forgiving, and patient with myself. Maybe I'll include that in my daily intentions so that I can be more loving, forgiving, and patient with my kids and others. And I'm asking for assistance now spiritually and moving into this expanded place that can assist me in shifting from a negative reaction to a more positive expression. So this purpose of this question is to get a clear vision and hold the intention for what I want that utilizes the awarenesses and learnings that this situation brought forward. So I'm using it in a positive way, in addition to seeing it as something I can learn and grow from. The next question is more practical. How can I move in the direction of this greater blessing? So it's looking and intuiting or asking inwardly what the next step might be and putting my body on the line to move towards my intention, excuse me. I don't know how to do all the steps. I don't have to know everything I have to do to create what I want, but I just have to act with what's the next step that I can do to get to that place of being and living my intention in a greater way. And it doesn't have to be a logical answer. It's just coming from some inner wisdom inside of you that says, this is what's going to help. It might be that I make sure I spend 10 minutes a day at least in quiet, nurturing time for myself. With my older kids, I might be able to sit down and talk to them about the situation and ask them to help me. Talk about a vision of how our interactions could be more positive. What do they need from me to get into a greater cooperation? Do they need a better understanding of what I was asking them? To be more quiet, do the chores, come into the table to eat, whatever. Also, is there a way I can be more flexible when I'm asking to get more cooperation? I had a situation where I really learned something about being flexible. Of course, it's fine. Of course, we want kids to listen and cooperate with what they're asked. But in this situation, I became aware that there wasn't necessarily a good reason for what I was asking. I had planned a day with my 5-year-old niece to take her to visit grandma, and we stopped at a new park on the way. She was really excited, loved the park, and was going up and down the slide many times. And at one point, I decided it was time to leave and head to grandma's, and I asked her to stop because we needed to go. She continued playing on the slide, and I got very irritated. It seemed to me like this could really escalate into some kind of power struggle. But I looked at that irritation and told myself, the intention for the day was to have fun together. Did it really matter if it was at the park or grandma's? And I knew my mom would understand if we didn't make it over there. So I asked her to come over and talk to me. And I explained that we could either continue to play in the new park or go to grandma's. But if we wanted to go to grandma's, we had to leave now so we could get home on time. If we didn't get home on time, we wouldn't get as many opportunities to play together. What did she want to do? I asked. She paused a moment and said, let's go to grandma's. So my flexibility led to the result I had wanted, that I got through cooperation now, but not instead of force. The last question is, what did I appreciate today? What am I grateful for? What situations, experiences reflected my spiritual, mental, emotional intentions for myself? This question's importance is to recognize and appreciate that blessings that occur that we may not otherwise acknowledge. Sometimes it's much easier to focus on what was wrong with the day than what was right with it. So I could appreciate being a mother. I can appreciate my kids. I can appreciate that I care about being a good mother. I can appreciate that I'm often kind and supportive to my kids. I appreciate my husband for supporting me by helping dinner after a long, challenging day. I can appreciate my friend Claire for listening and help me decompress. And if the appreciation is not something about me, it's about something I appreciated from others, then I look at how I can appreciate myself in that. I appreciate that I am supportive of my husband. I am a good listener when a friend are going through challenging times as well. So there's a few people that did actually start using the questions in the workbook, and I'm just going to give some feedback on how they found the questions and how they worked with them. Diana said, I found the discipline of reading my intentions each day and thinking about the questions. I was more attentive to my being intentions. They became real for me. I've been clearing a lot lately, and the intentions help me stay focused on God and clearing away judgments that separate me from God. This exercise increased my awareness of what is. It has elevated my awareness and brought more clarity into my life. Susan's feedback was the journaling was helpful in keeping an awareness of self and judgments of others. It keeps me on track with my intentions. Crystal reported at least half the time I did the journaling, I connected to spirit or the I am. When I didn't do things by rote, but really participated, the door was open for spirit to heal parts of me. Tears and forgiveness came easily. Another benefit is the realizations that came. One is how I started to look at the end questions of appreciation. I had never had the feeling to go to the appreciation or positive awarenesses. I was more comfortable with the judgments, a great awareness. From Tom, I realized that by doing the questions at the end of the day, the communion connection is always going on. It was benefit of the questions that I realized most of my judgments were not accepting the world as it is, people as they are, wanting to change it, make it different. And he says, I really like the question, quote, what part of me does this judgment reflect and how can I embrace love, take it back to myself? For that's really about me, and I love embracing that in myself. That is core for me. Judy said the benefit I received was the depth of awareness I had sometimes when answering the questions. I often felt reluctant to do this, but was often surprised and enlightened by my attitude. Darlene says there was an energy of these types of questions that brought me into a higher altitude, and seeing the things I have been experiencing helped me. My attitude went from how am I going to do this, which I hadn't been aware of, to wow, God's got this. And I continue listening inwardly for next steps and taking those steps and forgiving myself when I don't. So we're coming to an end of this episode. I want to remind you that you can visit soulmusings.org, request the free workbook, if Building Spiritual Muscles, which will walk you through setting intentions, and also the reflective journaling questions in this episode. You can contact me also for a 15-minute free consult. Let's say you're working through things, you get stuck, or you want to just know more about the kind of work that I do and how can I assist you. All those things are available to you if you contact me through soulmusings.org, 15-minute free, and we can decide what the next step would be. So I want to end again with a kind of prayer, and it's a little bit different kind of prayer. It's called an intercessory prayer. A lot of times when we pray, from my point of view, we're kind of asking God to come in and help us with some situation, with something that we need, with something we'd like to bless. The intercessory prayer is a little different, where we're actually just looking at the fact that Spirit, God, that force in the universe that's greater than us, really has probably more power, has more insight, has more wisdom than we could ever hope to have. I mean, to me, there are so many things in the world I could spend all day praying for, and then all night wondering if I actually prayed for the one thing that's going to make a difference in my life or the world. So with that kind of trust in spirit, the intercessory prayer is just taking Again, centering, and please do this with me if you're called to, if it feels comfortable. Just take another moment to center in that divine essence that you are, that loving, that brilliant light being within you. Again, take in a deep breath if that helps. Put your hand on your heart, often connects us with that part. And in this prayer, we're going to just send our light to Spirit, to God, to use for ourselves and our lives, for those we love, for the world, in the ways that Spirit knows best, in the ways that in that divine wisdom can create the greatest positivity, loving, joy, and peace in the world. So let's do that now. Take in a deep breath. Experience that loving, centered part within you. And now just send that light, love, peace that you are to this greater intention for your own life and for all of humanity, to be used according to the highest good for everyone. And just experience the grace and the peace that can come forward with this kind of prayer. I use this prayer whenever I'm in a situation I'm trying to figure out how to do things, and instead I just give it over to Spirit. And tell me if you use the prayer, what your experience is. Tell me if you've been using the intentions of the workbook. We'd love to have more feedback. Any questions, any places you're getting stuck, please connect with me through soulmusings.org, the contact form, and look forward to seeing you next month in May. In the May episode, we're going to go back to the kind of global community and consensus work, and we're going to look at some of the skills that people use in consensus to create more cooperation, more harmony with interactions with others. We'll look at some specific skills that you as a speaker can learn in order to engender more connection, communication, collaboration, and cooperation with those you're interacting with. So we'll look forward to seeing you then, and God bless you, and peace. You have been listening to Soul Musings, exploring and embracing higher perspectives with me, Dr. Connie. Tune in every second Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific to learn how to use every experience for spiritual expansion and how to create the essence of the experience you want instead of the form. Learn about ways of living and working together that help build a more loving and cooperative world. Visit soulmusings.org to see more about what I offer and to book a 15-minute free consult.